So I would just like to welcome everybody to this Digital Wellness Sandpit, and really just ask initially that we think about a little bit, sorry, my screen share isn't working, there we go. We just think about some housekeeping. So for the most part, we'd ask you, we are 68 participants, I believe, or we'll get to there hopefully. So if we could ask you to mute microphones unless you're speaking, that helps us manage the technology a little better. Please do keep your video on unless we get to a situation where we're struggling with that. It's really nice to see as many faces as possible and try and connect digitally. Do submit comments and questions through the chat function as we're going through. We have 2 periods of chat planned, and we're really keen to have Q&A, and this is really about forging connections between all the participants. And please note that this session is being recorded, and Jen, if I could just remind you on that, that would be fantastic. So prior to kicking off and prior to really handing over to the person who's really leading this, Jane Burns, and I'll give Jane a little intro in a moment, I would like to acknowledge the people of the Woiwurrung and Bunurong language groups of the Eastern Kulin Nations on whose unceded lands we conduct the business of the university, and respectfully acknowledge their ancestors and elders past and present, and particularly as we come together across the whole of Australia. There are people from New South Wales, there are people from South Australia. I did notice somebody who I think Tech Ranch Austin was registered. I'm not sure if they're there, so if we're going global, fantastic. But I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians and their ancestors of all the lands and waters across Australia where we conduct our business this morning. Our agenda today really is pretty fast. I've been discussing the need to stick to some hard times, and Jen and I will be trying to manage that. There is so much in this morning's, event that we will want to discuss. I would encourage you to make connections and maybe take those discussions offline after 11:30 when we finish. But the concept here is really about a digital wellness sandpit. Will be led by Dr. Jane Burns, who's Mental Health and Wellbeing Innovator at BUPA, Chair of Open Arms and STREAT, amongst many, many, many other hats that Jane wears. Jane and I had a discussion after the last webinar series around workforce innovation in uncertainty, and really it was her desire to, as we saw here, cut through the noise, and that inspired this morning, really looking at not just talking about the challenges of digital wellness, but what really works, what are they emerging, and who are the emerging disruptors and disruptions, who would we like to showcase, who do we think is doing great work, and really this is Jane's session to lead. So as the innovator in the chair, let's say, her insights, Jane will also be speaking with Mindstar is somebody, and that's their CEO, Aaron Williams, who she's very keen to have a discussion with and talk around what is a digital wellness sandpit and what that might even mean. So really, really keen to get some more around that. And then we have our Innovators Showcase, where we've got 4 amazing innovators coming through, a couple from RMIT and connection with the sensing and wearables and sensing network. We've got Pete from Health Delivered, we've got Caleb from GenYus, we've got Andrew who's doing some incredible work around wearable technology and entrepreneurial well-being, and we also have Joe, who's going to talk to us about drone chi. So with that, I will hand over to Jane and say, please, let's have some of your innovators' insights, Jane.
Okay, thanks so much, Margaret. And Aaron, are you on the line?
Yes, can you not see me?
I can't see you, but I can now. Brilliant.
Fantastic. Hello, how are you?
I'm very, very pleased to see you. I couldn't see you before, and I was like, oh, holy crap, this is not going to be a great innovator's sandpit if we haven't got the sandpit person with us. So this is a 20-minute conversation, and I've said to Margaret and to Jen, we talk a lot, not dissimilar, Caleb, to you. We love a good chat, but what I was keen to do was sort of reflect on the last 2 decades, and that's how old I am, of Australia has been absolutely at the cutting edge in terms of mental health innovation. So back in 1997, Reach Out was launched. It was led by Jack Heath, young guy, Jono. It was all about connecting young people with other young people to share their stories and to reach out for help. Still exists today, fabulous resource for young people. But that was 23 years ago. We've since seen some other fabulous innovations like the Mindstar guys who do online CBT. We've got Head to Health, which is the digital mental health gateway. Hello Sunday Morning was stood up a decade ago around peer-to-peer support to take a break from alcohol by another young innovator, Chris Rain, who basically just said, I've had enough, I'm working in the industry and yet I'm going out and drinking Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, ending up with a massive hangover. I'm going to build a peer-to-peer network so that people can actually take a break from alcohol. Now, all of those things are around social connection, and they're all around how we can support ourselves to stay mentally healthy, fit and well. So when Margaret and I were talking about this challenge and how do we actually shift the dialogue from it being just about stigma and help seeking to it really being about building out digital innovations that connect people and make them feel valued and able to participate. And Aaron, pre-COVID, we had this brilliant idea, which we thought was absolutely fabulous of, and you'll talk to this, of how do we bring together corporate Australia, so led by BUPA, industry, key industries, along with fantastic researchers and showcase what innovation could look like this in this space. And how would we build that into a digital sandpit so that we could trial and test different innovations? The reason we wanted to do that was because it's not a one size fits all. So what suits a big corporate, a top end of town, predominantly working in Sydney or Melbourne, may not suit another big corporate that has a supply chain of, sort of like a Woolies or a Coles, where, you're sort of delivering food and stocking shelves and keeping our supermarkets running. So I'm going to hand over to you, Aaron, because again, my reflections of what's worked, what hasn't worked. And I think, if we point to the things that haven't worked, we've got some challenges in expecting people to identify when they're struggling with their mental health, put their hand up, pick up a phone, ring someone, have a chat. And some of the stuff you've been leading around proactive outreach has been absolutely fantastic in terms of supporting people to stay mentally fit, healthy and well, but also to use the tools that help keep them mentally fit, healthy and well. So I'm going to hand over to you for a chat and perhaps sharing of some of the insights and the conversations that we've had over the last little while.
Yeah, thank you, Jane. G'day, everyone. How you going? You better stop me too. Tell me when my time's up, because I'll talk about this all day if I have half a chance. So just you better drag me. So my name's Aaron Williams. I'm the CEO and co-founder for Mindstar. And really, in a simple way, what Mindstar is about well-being and about workplace well-being in particular. And it's about making it super, super easy for people to connect with the very best well-being and mental health information, education, training, support. We've got online programs, a network of well-being coaches across the country, or professionals. And it's about doing it all in a really simple, easy, healthy way. And so, as Jane said, we work with everyone from, Woolworths to national construction companies, to ballet companies, not-for-profits, elite sport, and really across the whole country and across industries, because every industry requires this. They did before COVID, when we had drought, going into bushfire, going into pandemic. These are, I'm using the word too much, but these are unprecedented times. So really what we're looking to do is, it's about engagement, and it's about the best use of technology and quality services to connect with people. Because we know that, if you look at the moment with employee assistance programs who provide the bulk of support to organizations, we know globally, you're looking at around between 3 and 6% engagement generally. And whereas we know in some industries, for example, financial services, you're looking up to 1 in 3 people experiencing some kind of mental health issue or crisis every 12 months. So you've got 33% experiencing something, and you've got 3% or 6% actually engaging. So I'd also, the big thing for me, and this is what Jane and I have been talking about, for decades, is
it's showing your age.
You've got this 3% that are getting support at the pointy end, but what about the 97%? And I think that's when the well-being aspect becomes so important, because it's not just when people want to call 000 or jump off something or leave their partner or leave their job or anything else. It's really when we need to support people at the crisis end, but it's an end-to-end solution. We need to engage with people well before that, when they're well, to help them stay well, and give them all the tools to be able to do that.
So Aaron, can I just jump in quickly? And again, having looked at the research, and certainly some of the great research that's come out of our fabulous universities around, people still don't know how to navigate to find the right support. And it's been one of the things that has been probably the biggest challenge, that there's so much resource out there. There are so many fantastic innovations, but people just don't know how to source them, how to find them, how to navigate. And we tend to think that if we just stand up a telephone hotline, or if we create another portal, that people are going to go to it. And I suppose what I'm really keen, and the reason we wanted to do this as an innovation sandpit, around there'll be different things that are different for different people. So I know with Caleb's work around GenYus, that's it for a specific cohort. But what we want to do is showcase how we can put it all into one big digital sandpit to trial and test for different population groups. And I know that sounds like a weird thing to say, but it makes sense in the context of different needs of different people. And I know one of the conversations we'd had with one of your corporates was around a young person who was LGBTIQ, who was struggling with their sexual identity, but also being bullied at work. Now, that particular workplace didn't know about the amazing resources from the LGBTIQ Alliance or from Queer Life, and how would they? Because how do you know where all of these things sit? So, and they don't know what fantastic things are coming out of universities that could be of benefit to their workplace. And so I just wondered if you can comment on digital innovation, sandpit, navigation, and how we simplify it for people so that we're not constantly innovating, but losing the opportunity to connect and to create these connection points for people.
Yeah, I'd love to. We've been working in partnership with a global leader called Go1, who are a global leading platform company backed by Microsoft US and Seek, and I know Barry's on this call, but what that does is allow us the opportunity, because the challenge is always engaging with people at the right time with the appropriate intervention. So whatever that is, so for someone who's well, that might be just a program, a course, something engaging. So what we can do is actually connect with them via technology through their phone. So it's actually something they can engage with that looks great, that helps them maintain their well-being, and we can actually reach out to them right through to sort of that medium. People in the medium space, which they may actually connect them with a person straight away. It's like, great, talk to a coach. Here you go, click here, and there's that connection. And then through to someone who's in high distress, who will get immediate support. So it's actually that right intervention at the right time that they need. And to give you an example of that, for example, we had one young bloke who was in the construction industry, who we know the stats around suicide and mental health in the construction industry. This young bloke was drinking by himself on a Sunday arvo, drinking bourbon by himself, highly distressed, didn't know what was wrong, and then just started. And his workplace had provided the digital platform that he then just jumped on his phone, just started scrolling through, and sent a message saying, "I think I've got depression. I need some help." One line. And then we had someone hooked up because of the technology, come straight through. The next day we had him talking to a wellbeing coach that next morning who worked with him every day. If he'd gone through the health system, he would have had to, firstly, would have woke up in the morning, sobered up and gone, nah, forget about it. I'll just shelve that. Or he would have had to then try and take time off work, go see a GP, get a mental health care plan, find a psychologist, try and see a psychologist, and 8 weeks later, maybe get an appointment. So it's just an example, I suppose. It's about engagement and about immediate connection that fits what that person's experiencing at that point in time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so Aaron, and it's a really good example, and I do a lot of work with defence and veterans families, and the idea of reaching out for support is not something that they naturally do. It's just not. And many of the conversations we've had over the period of time around the co-design of how do you actually design these services so that they're fit for purpose and people actually, it's not stigmatizing, it's actually about using the things that people relate to. So things like music and mood, gaming has come up constantly. I don't know if Marissa's on this call. Wearable tech, I know we're going to talk a little bit about that, but the things that people use in their everyday life that allow them to connect in a meaningful way. The last webinar we did, I used the example of TikTok. Now, not for everyone, fair enough, but it's connecting and giving meaning and purpose and doing it in a way that actually is sensible for the person. So music might be right for someone, gaming might be right for someone else. There's a whole host of different types of platforms that we can use, but the idea is how do we actually make it resonate for the person? So, you know, music may not suit everyone. Gaming, not my cup of tea. TikTok, probably not yours, but what we're trying to do and what we're keen to get you to think about, and again, you know, as Margaret has sort of said, we want to think differently about mental health. We don't want it to be about, you know, people are depressed and they're anxious and they've got drug and alcohol problems. It's rather, how do we shift the dial and change the dialogue from you need to pick up the phone and talk to someone, that's counselling, to actually mental health is everyone's business. And I know Big Health yesterday launched an online dance program, I think it was, you know, Bollywood dancing. Again, not my cup of tea, but they'd done some research which basically said, you know, people aren't relating to the Les Millses or the Sam Woods of the world. They want things that they can relate to. So Big Health stood this up. Now, I can imagine that would resonate with a whole host of other people. But it's about choice, and it's about giving a variety of different things and getting people to think differently about mental health. And I know we've talked a lot about mental fitness, but it just makes sense that in the same way that we think about our physical fitness, we think about our mental fitness and start to, you know, really learn the skills that keep us mentally fit, healthy and well. So I wondered if you could comment on that.
Yeah, and what we're really, where we're at and where we're pushing forward is firstly that engagement piece with someone who then can go into this digital sandpit, if you like, that they have choice. So that then it can be pushed to them. So it's there at the click of a button, they can actually be provided with that content. But also over time, the AI and the machine learning will then start to push to them what it's determined that they prefer. So what learning style do they want, whether it's a course, whether they prefer to read static fact sheets. But I think it's really because, and especially through COVID, what we're seeing is every single demographic group is experiencing this very differently. So, you know, parents are totally overwhelmed and are, you know, schooling from home and have no time. Single people are as bored as batshit and trying to, you know, fill their hours and try and work out what they can do with these hours, and they're doing different things. People with anxiety, their anxiety is going through the roof. So there's a whole range of different personal experiences. So we actually need to engage them with like Jane's saying, the intervention or the education, or, you know, we call it edutainment. We need to entertain people and educate them at the same time, which breaks down the stigma and allows them to watch TED Talks or whatever else, and then pull all that data up to a centralized place so that we can actually then look at it at an individual level, maybe at a group level, and then look at it as an organization level and at a country level. So then we can actually learn what people are consuming, so we can start to push the different interventions and tools and technologies to people depending on what they require.
Great. How are we going for time, Margaret?
I think you're muted.
You've got 5 minutes.
Perfect. So I'm very, very, very pleased, Aaron, that you mentioned TED Talks, and it's not something we ever talk about when we talk about mental health, but a few years ago when we were doing the Head to Health co-design workshop, which was to the Department of Health's credit, they said, yeah, absolutely, if we're going to design a digital mental health gateway, go out and talk to people. And go out and talk to people and ask them about what they actually want and what is going to resonate with them. And so over a course of, I don't know, a very short period of time, we did co-design with across every state and territory with people with a lived experience in mental health, people who did not have a lived experience in mental health but cared about mental health and wellbeing, and with some of the big providers. Now, those co-design sessions, we didn't tell anyone who was who. You know, we didn't say, well, here are the people who, you know, live with a mental health problem, or here are the people who, you know, are the general community, and here's, you know, the chief psychiatrist from Tasmania. We had level playing field, and again, we often talk about co-design, but we do co-design in very siloed ways. So we'll have a lived experience group, and then we'll have a professional group. And I think what I'm loving about this concept of a digital sandpit, and loving about bringing together the academics with lived experience, with digital innovation, and you know, people who live and breathe the technologies, is that we can start to get a real insight into what people want. And the things that we found back when we did that co-design session were they wanted short, sharp snippets of information and content that was relevant to them, which the TED Talks came up constantly, because when you think about all of the amazing, incredible academics who actually do great TED Talks, there's one called Beducation. It's the best thing I've seen on why it's important to sleep. You know, we keep talking about, oh, you must get more sleep, and everyone's sort of like, well, how? If you go to the Beducation course, it's a simple thing. It's done by one of the professors, I've forgotten his name, Russell Foster, I want to say, I don't know if that's right, but you know, it simply runs you through, here are the ways in which you can actually think about sleep hygiene, and here are some of the resources and tools. And again, I think we sometimes think about mental health as this complicated, illness-focused rather than wellness-focused. And if we flip it on its head and think about, well, what are the great assets and resources that we've got, and how do we link these things to, for example, the wearable techs that might help you understand sleep. So, you know, again, RMIT, I know, are doing a lot of work with the Sleep Tight guys. There are some clever ways that we can bring together all the different innovations and do it in a way that's almost a trial and test. And it is a trial and test, but in a rapid trial and test, not in the old school way of doing, you know, randomized controlled trials to see if these things work, but rather putting together things and sort of smashing them together to say, actually, if you've got a bit of, you know, a TED Talk and education video, and you team it with an app or a tool that actually supports good sleep hygiene, and you start to measure these things, then we've actually changed the dialogue around where it's about empowering the person and about changing and challenging the way in which we think about promoting all of the things that we know are good for your mental health. But often behaviour change is really, really hard, which is why I love the Hello Sunday Morning stuff around joining a community to take a break from alcohol. It's not, you must not drink, or here are the NHMRC guidelines on only drinking, you know, 2 glasses a day or whatever it is, to actually saying, as a community, how do we support each other to change our behaviours? So Aaron, with our last 3 minutes, because you have been a tech startup guy and like me have experienced some of the challenges of getting technologies stood up and some of the heartbreak of seeing your great idea fall over because the tech didn't really stack up. Can you comment on that, what it's meant to be an entrepreneur in this innovation startup space, the heartbreaks, the challenges, and some of the learnings from that going forward, which again, when I think about a digital sandpit and how we can actually use the infrastructure of a Go One platform, which obviously has massive investment from, you know, Microsoft and others. Do you want to comment on that and the challenges for startup guys and girls? I shouldn't be gender specific there, people.
The challenges of 60 years of running a tech startup. You can see the grey coming through here. I had much more hair when I started, but I think it was really. But I think at the moment, just to comment on that, we're kind of I see us being at an intersection in history, and that's not trying to be a wanker. It's actually we're actually in between well-being, technology, and health research, where I think we now know what we need to do. I think we have enough data, enough research to go, great. With all the pieces are there, it's how do we put them together? So it's the integration piece, and this is what the digital sandpit does. It actually allows us to bring in a whole bunch of different tools into an amazing global digital sandpit or platform that has the flexibility and the functionality to be able to plug and play in an agnostic way with a whole range of different pieces and organizations. And it's bringing the good people together to do wonderful things. I think it's that simple. So it's doing that, it's checking your egos at the door, bringing everything together and changing the world is how I like to put it. So I think we've got this opportunity now from, the cloud-based system, and now the major organizations of the world investing in it and going, this is the next step. This is what we need to do. So I think really the only limits to that are the limits to our imagination, because the technology's there. We don't have to build something from scratch. We just have to plug it in, and we don't need another 6-year longitudinal research piece to tell us what we need to do. We actually need to do stuff now and execute it, because there's too many people who aren't well, there's too many people dying, and I think it's time to do this now rather than wait for, next year, the year after, or have more white papers or pieces of longitudinal research to check out what we need to do.
Okay, beautiful finish. And Margaret, I might just finish with an end comment, because I think it points to the appetite of not just universities and not just industry, but also the appetite of the government. So pre-COVID, we were having conversations across education, defence, Veterans Affairs, Prime Minister and Cabinet, health, social services, disability services. They're really keen to see a shift and a change. And then post-COVID, with lockdown, the Department of Industry and Innovation ran a whole weekend hackathon, and I was involved in that as one of the judges. And I know over that course of that weekend, they had 2,000 innovators working out how they could solve particular problems and find solutions for it. And some of the things that they stood up within just 2 days were just incredible. And again, if I think about how we can rapidly start to change the conversation, if we get the right, and I think to your point, partners, and the right resourcing around it and the right support around it, we do have an amazing opportunity to, I think, stand up. And we're going to hear from 4 of our great examples of innovators with their 3-minute pitches. But we can quickly stand things up and trial and test them across a variety of different population groups. And I suppose I'm going to finish there, Margaret, with we have an opportunity, we have a commitment from BUPA to support some of this work. And I'm working with currently Aaron and the teams around how do we actually get this thing funded in a way that's actually going to support some of our great innovators coming through. So that's my own little personal pitch. Please be in touch if you're keen to be involved. And I know RMIT are big supporters of this. So we're currently working with the RMIT R&D teams and across a number of the different universities to really say, what does it mean to do this differently? How do we actually create a movement around shifting the dial on the work that we do in mental health and wellbeing? So I'll finish. I'll go on mute. I think we stuck to time.
Yes, thanks Jane, and thanks Aaron. Absolutely fascinating. So just a couple of things for me. Obviously, I am the industry fellow for innovation and talent at RMIT Activator, and that's sort of the home of entrepreneurship for RMIT. So really keen to also think about obviously how we can support entrepreneurship and innovation. Certainly we see the thematic come through many of our student entrepreneurs and those who are participating in our programs like Launch Hub. I think one of the really interesting things for me, just listening to you both, and Aaron, very early on you spoke to engagement. And I think and another key theme is storytelling. So the language around this is critical. And I had a really interesting conversation with Caleb, who we'll hear from shortly as well, around taking what is one application area, so mental health, and talking about it differently. So Aaron, you were talking about engagement and going into corporates. And I think changing how and looking towards the outcomes of better mental health or the outcomes of enhanced engagement is a way that we can start to think about getting people to listen who at the moment perhaps are not listening hard enough. So I think going in today and talking to a corporate about enhanced talent retention and engagement versus perhaps mental health of their employees will probably, and I think we all need to become a little bit better than that. It seems a little bit, I guess, it shouldn't be so difficult to talk about mental health, but where it is, I think being clever about the language is fantastic. And that ability to come together and sort of live and work horizontally across boundaries. When we go out to our students, we're constantly telling them they must work across boundaries. There's no single discipline. Stop the silos. And that is a challenge. But as you said, if we can get that right, and we're sitting at an intersection of so many disciplines and that can enhance each other, that offers great hope. And I think I will use that as a segue to introduce some of the amazing emerging minds, tech and ventures in this space. And Andrew, if we perhaps could kick off with you. There's not a lot of questions coming in on the chat, so I'm going to save our time towards the end and we'll kick off now. And Andrew, if I could ask you to talk to, I mean, we talked about the need for founders and new ventures in this space, and your work is again a wonderful intersection of entrepreneurship, well-being, wearable technology, and I would make a nod there. I see Leah has joined us. Leah Highs from the Wearables and Sensing Network, as has Olga. Leah, just so you know, you're showing up as Margaret Ledwith as well, so there are two of me today, which is absolutely fantastic. Probably I forwarded you the invite, so this is the real me. I wish I could be Leah, but you know, that's a whole other level of innovation. So Andrew, if I could ask you to introduce yourself, tell us what it's all about. I'm really looking forward to hearing about your innovation.
Thanks, Margaret. I'm actually going to share my screen for something a bit different and talk about sort of work that I've been doing recently. Can everyone see that? It's a roller coaster.
Yep.
Okay, so my name's Andrew Brough, happy to be here. So my background, I have been an entrepreneur, worked in technology. I've also worked a lot with university spin-outs, and then moved into social enterprise, social entrepreneurship around health and education. And then the last 6 years before I ended up at RMIT, I was working with the Foundation for Young Australians. So worked with people from Reach Out, Hello Sunday Morning, etc., and became very interested in how young people are becoming entrepreneurial in the future and how the future of work is changing. I work heavily with Dr. Pia Arrhenius here at RMIT, and we've got a group of 3 PhDs, including myself. If you ever want a late career change, doing a PhD is obviously a very interesting journey. But through my life, I've seen sort of the emotional roller coaster that entrepreneurs go through, where work and life is integrated, you're very goal focused, etc. And you go through periods of excitement, optimism, but then also anxiety, fear, depression, and then returning to hope, relief, optimism. It can be in a day, it can be over the life cycle of your venture. Most entrepreneurs are quite familiar with this feeling. And we know that in the past, the sort of heropreneur or entrepreneur have been this sort of mythical person that can do everything, shouldn't have wellness and other issues. But as Aaron was saying earlier, I think we're getting to a point now where we all realize that that's not the case. So how do we sort of help entrepreneurs understand this journey and help them be self-aware and self-manage this journey more effectively is quite important. And probably the other point that's quite interesting, that now many employees are on this journey. The future of work's changing, where we're all in a way entrepreneurs, whether we're running our own startup or we're working in university, government, corporates. We work long hours, responsibility for managing ourselves as well as our venture project, and we have conflicting short and long-term goals that are frequently changing. So key questions that sort of I was interested in were, you know, how to improve our own self-awareness and self-management of our performance and well-being on this journey, and also how can society educate and support us in this journey. So to do that, and the reason I started on this research journey at RMIT was I actually worked at a wearables company 10, 12 years ago in the UK. It was a little bit early in a wearables technology point of view and the integration into our lives, but I always had an interest in it. And over time, we've seen that wearable technology is evolving. Now it comes in various shapes and sizes on the screen. You'll recognize some of them, whether it's Fitbit, Apple or Samsung watches. They're now becoming integrated in various ways in all of our lives. As this technology evolves, it will be able to give us, on an individual level, much more data, much more information, and in future sort of lead indicators of your change in well-being. And the intervention is how do we help to respond to those sort of lead indicators and maintain our performance and well-being. And again, as Aaron and James said, a lot of the pieces are there, and a lot of the challenge now is just how do we integrate it all together.
Okay, I'm going to give a 30-second call.
Yep. What we're doing is using a very advanced wearable device called the E4. We use it to measure a lot of different factors. We get data across these factors. And what we're most interested now is understanding the cycles of recovery and depletion in sort of people's self-regulation and self-management, and how that impacts their well-being and performance. It could be nightly, be cumulative, 2 to 3 days in a row, or ongoing, which could lead to chronic stress, burnout, etc., and understanding that. And then linking that into interventions that help at the individual level, so that at an end product point of view, we have a data analysis algorithm and interface that works with consumer wearables to support this self-awareness and management of these cycles of depletion and recovery, so we can maintain and improve our well-being and performance. Like any project, we're working with participants to collect data, but we're also always looking for partners, joint projects, the data analysis and processing, funding, etc., to continue our research. And obviously across RMIT, as you mentioned, Margaret, there's many people involved in looking at the potential of wearables in many different ways, and we're looking to obviously continue that integration process.
Fantastic. Fantastic. I'm going to have to stop you there, and it's very hard. I'm sure it looks absolutely fascinating. I'd love to learn more, and I know we have a great cohort. I'm sure you've connected into Activator, but feel free to do so. And anybody out there who wants to connect with Andrew, please do so. If you've got any support, insights, feedback, this is what today is all about. So I'm going to keep people to a hard 3 minutes if I can, so that we can allow for connections and a bit of chat towards the end. So moving swiftly on, we have Pete Saunders. Pete, hi, how are you? Pete, you got house delivered, and I will, because we've got a couple of minutes, give you an extra minute. I know you have a second.
Well, that ruins the
second
surprise.
initiative you'd like to speak to, so briefly. Okay.
Thank you. As I set up, Aaron, I'll just highlight, mate, hair loss, come on. Okay. I also just want to quickly say the discussion to date has been really insightful, and as a result of that, I've decided to throw out my entire pitch and just talk to some really specific things. So this could be anything. By way of introduction, we've developed a data-driven platform to create personalized and clinically validated meal plans without the need to see a dietitian. And I want to highlight this slide because in the current ways of working, nutritionists, personal trainers, all these individuals, Sam Wood was highlighted before. Sam is not legally able to provide a personalized meal plan. He can only make recommendations based on the Australian Guide to Healthy Eating. So what we've done is focused on the clinical dietetic space for a dietitian to come in and analyze your likes, dislikes, health conditions, medications, the whole lot, and turn that into a week's worth of meals based on everything that's relevant to you. Will take up to 4 hours. So we set about trying to digitize that entire process. There were some stats here. I think the cost of nutrition is quite clear and the evidence is growing. Corporate wellness, employee wellness, these sorts of things, there's actually demonstrable proof in financial terms of up to $450 per employee per year, which is not much, but if you add that up over, let's say, 5,000 at RMIT, that's in excess of $2 million in savings, not just the productivity costs. What I'm talking about with our system is we've digitized the decision-making process. We have a really simple health screening tool. We've developed algorithms that will analyze up to 6,000 recipes and find how they best fit over the course of a week. We mentioned clinical validation up front. There's a slide on this later, but we gave all of our algorithms to CSIRO and said, how do these perform? And they looked at all the inputs, all the outputs across a random cross-selection of diets and recipes, I think in total calculating against 24,000 nutrient benchmarks, and we were 88% compliance through our automated system. I think specifically to someone like Aaron, we don't provide the services, we provide you the technology to plug that in to everything else that you're doing. So in a sandbox, say you find that someone wants a meal plan, press the button, and what you'll get is this whole walkthrough. It's 30 seconds to get a meal plan. There's some key selling points which will probably kind of covered off. We're clinically validated, so it's low risk. We can obviously attract additional customers because it's self-service, and so it's scalable. We reduce the need for, let's say, dietitians or nutritionists because it really is around giving or putting it in the hands of people. And we also price it at a point where you can bolt it on as an additional service, so it becomes a new revenue source. We work with people either white labeling it, make it look like your brand, and away you go. But for bigger organizations, it's an API and you can work within your own infrastructure. And we really want big numbers. And so we talk about like $8.95 per person per month to have a meal plan compared to probably $400 for a clinical dietitian. And if you're selling this at 5, 10, 20,000 people, your margins are increasing. And so that's where we try and position ourselves. We talk more about scale. We want to be a bolt-on service into big providers rather than going down this really hands-on niche approach that's currently in place. And then of course the team, who are fantastic, and there's a few of us. But I think, we wanted to talk about and ask, that's still here. We really want to focus on decision makers within corporates, wellness, fitness, who provide nutritional services at scale or want to do so. And we also want to increase our functionality to look at supply chain with food products, supplements, and medications. And so bolting this on as part of that system is the next layer of expansion that we want to get into. Now that was 3 minutes 45. So I did go over time, but I also said that I was going to be a bit cheeky. And as a startup founder, I obviously also have a full-time job. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at TALI Health, which is a clinically validated detection and attention improvement product and game for children with attention difficulties. We focus solely in the 3 to 8-year-old space. Detect is an online and assessment base where you can actually find out how that child is performing against a range of cognitive development markers and identify whether they are borderline or vulnerable. And for those children who are potentially borderline or vulnerable, often seen in disorders like attention or ADHD and autism, then we have an actual clinically validated training tool, which is an intensive game-based tool, 5-week sessions, five weekly sessions for 20 minutes that actively increase the cognitive development around attention in young children. And there's obviously, again, increases in how a child's performance works in that space, which is really big for learning and development, really big for socializing and other aspects of their development. And so that was a super quick one. We're running a good attention campaign right now. So if you want to jump on to talihealth.com.au and look /attention, tell any parent you know of a child aged 3 to 8. And if you have introductions to primary school principals, advocacy support, or relevant healthcare professionals, we want to hear from you. That was 5 minutes. Thank you.
Awesome, Pete. Thank you. That was
very, very fast, but I wanted to try and make it as relevant to our discussion as possible.
No, that's the point. It's a 3-minute pitch. So I'm glad we recorded this. We can show it to some of our emerging founders as a really great way to talk to the problem, the solution, and the ask. Right? You took that straight on. Thank you. And could talk about that for a long time, and any help we can provide in terms of looking for alternative applications. I have a lot of thoughts on that. I might talk to you after about that. So next up we have Joe. Hi, Joe. So I'm really excited about this because I get to hear about Drone Chi. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, Drone Chi. It's kind of the major project in my PhD. Yeah.
Okay, Joe, you've got 3 minutes, not 5.
Okay.
3.
Sure. All right. So, can everybody see my screen now? Got a little drone on the screen. Can you see that, Margaret? Yeah, cool.
All good, all good.
Okay, so yes, Joseph Delfa. I'm a PhD student at RMIT School of Design. My research is about designing drones that can be directly manipulated by the body. I do this by making the drone respond to small changes in the way you move, breathe, and balance yourself. I'm trying to create moments of introspection and reflection when you use a drone, essentially. One such example here is Drone Chi, an experience that's inspired by the martial art of Tai Chi, and where a person moves with the drone in a slow and smooth manner. Drone Chi was designed to facilitate exploration of movement and also reflection on that exploration. So I'll run through quickly how it works. First, you follow the drone around in a circle. So using the light that's on the drone, it kind of gives you an idea of how your hands are moving and the way it reacts to your body. So it's kind of like an onboarding experience. You do this for long enough, then you get to move the drone around the room yourself. But you need to do this in a slow and smooth manner, as I said before. And this requires a lot of coordination and concentration to do this. We conducted a user experience study last year with 32 participants and published the results in this year's proceedings of CHI, which is Computer Human Interaction Conference. We found that designing the drones in this way certainly does bring attention to the body and gives foundations for the user to create their own rich narrative within their movements. So now we're doing 2 things. We're chatting to professionals in the health sector to identify the most effective and feasible real-world applications of this concept, and also moving to a different technology platform to assess the feasibility of scaling it up, and also moving it out of the lab, which is currently where it mainly resides, and into a more lived-in kind of context. So the ask is, what can I do to find out where this technology could be best implemented? And I guess who could I talk to as well? Thanks.
Thank you, Joe. Fascinating. I actually found myself almost moving forward into the screen as I was watching that. So so fascinating. And could I just also thank Leah House for helping to connect with you and have you be with us here this morning. So and to Leah and the Wearables and Sensing Network, always very supportive. And finally, Caleb.
Yes.
Yes, Caleb. Caleb wanted to go last, so I'm assuming you've got some really big end piece for us.
Okay, gotta give it a crack now.
Okay, so 3 minutes, and then really I would like people who particularly want to connect with somebody or have any suggestions about helping them with their ask, please use the last few minutes to do that. Caleb.
Amazing, thank you. So my name is Caleb. I'm going to share my screen very quickly with you. Let's just see if I can, can you see that? Oh, there we go. Can you see that? Great. So I'm Cal. I'm a stroke survivor, storyteller, disruptor by some, and I'm also the founder and CEO of GenYus. But as I said, my name is Cal. I believe that story sharing is the currency that we need to evolve to. So I want to tell you a bit about my story. My story started when I had this major stroke when I was 24. Now, this is obviously a very big physical experience, but the isolation that I felt and the impact on my mental health and my lack of community connection and my feeling of being a burden in the world was completely increased and disrupted the flow of my life. So what I have been developing is GenYus, a social enterprise on the mission to disrupt isolation through the power of connection and collaboration and using story sharing as currency. So basically we want to live in a world where every single person is empowered, all of us emotionally resilient and connected. And part of how we're doing that is by connecting people using the social lens. So we have a community, an amazing community of people from over...
Caleb, sorry. Yeah. Caleb, sorry, just your screen is grey. Now maybe it's meant to be, but I just wanted to check that with you.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't know exactly why that is. Tell me, does that work?
Yeah, no, I'm viewing your screen. Is that for everybody? Is Caleb's screen grey?
If it is, I'll just go to me.
We had the same thoughts. We weren't sure.
Oh, great. Okay, I'll just do this and get to me. So hang on, let's just make sure it's actually just me now. So can you see me without the screen?
Yep.
Fuck it. Okay, so basically, yeah, as I said, we use narrative to navigate, and basically the space that we're trying to create is a suite of digital products and services which completely disrupt isolation through the social lens. One of our products that we've been developing, and particularly as a response to COVID, which we've had huge success with, is called Coffee Club. And that now coming through the social lens, we connect people with acquired disability and otherness through life-changing trauma to share stories through peer mentorship programs and peer-led story sharing. Another thing that we've been doing is GenYus Roundtable, an offering that we've started in piloting in partnership with Monash and La Trobe universities to create an evidence-based approach to what we do. Now, obviously we believe that research is fundamental for actually creating an evidence base around that. And so moving through that sort of collaboration and connection with not only people with the lived experience of mental health issues, as you said, Jane, or people with acquired disability, this is about creating a world where all of us belong to meaningful community and can mobilize through the navigation of narrative. So part of the bigger, I guess, platform that we're developing is in partnership with Nesh AI, a conversational AI company. And we're basically developing a very robust, rich global platform where people from our community who are from over 56 countries now can connect and collaborate around the power of sharing story to not only create more empathy in the world, but also to create that rich, deep connection, which is really, we're social beings. We're not here to be clinical beings. So basically, what we are after really now is in terms of if you want to be part of a movement, I guess you could call it, or a platform build that connects our brothers and sisters with acquired disability or otherness from life-changing trauma to become more empowered, emotionally resilient and connected. You can join us by contributing as little as the equivalent of a cup of coffee for one of our coffee clubs, for one of our people living with a disability in the community once a month. You can join us by sponsoring one of our coffee club series or even one of our roundtable research projects, or finally come in and invest in a platform that is going to change the world by navigating through narrative. So if you want to be like Uber, who have disrupted the transport industry, or you want to be like Airbnb, who have completely fucking disrupted the hotel industry, come and join GenYus. Email me, caleb@geniusnetwork.com, GenYusNetwork.com. Come and join us and let's disrupt the isolation industry.
Great, Caleb. Thank you so much, and well done on the absolute pivot to sort of a lacking of a deck. That's fine. Sorry, the tech didn't work. Not quite sure what happened there.
Navigate through narrative, babe.
Yeah, you got to be able to tell the stories. That's great. Jane, I thought I'd hand back to you. I would just like to say from me, thanks to everybody. Thanks for your time. Thanks to Jen and the team at RMIT Activator, Luke, etc., who've pushed out on the marketing front. Thanks to Leah and Olga, who helped us in terms of connecting us to people. Obviously, thanks to Jane, Aaron, Pete, Andrew, and Caleb, and Joseph for your support. Hopefully it's been valuable. Hopefully you'll get a help with your ask. That's what we're hoping for, Jane. I will say bye for me, and Jane, I'll let you wrap up.
Okay, thanks, Margaret. And thank you to everyone. Every innovation, I can see where it fits and relevance and how we can potentially shape it and pitch it into different business units within BUPA. So that would be my first thing. There's an opportunity there. That said, BUPA's a big organisation and things move slowly, as Aaron knows. So, but I think if anything, mental health is top of the pops for our CEO at BUPA. He's prioritised it and is very, very actively supportive of how we actually start to think about supporting better mental health, healthy aging, well-being, etc., etc. Also thinking in terms of the work that I'm leading on behalf of BUPA with RMIT around this concept of the Cooperative Research Centre and bringing in innovations to trial and test across a 5 to 7 year period. Now that's a slower burn. But certainly everyone's innovations make sense in that context because it's around well-being and productivity. In terms of thinking about right now, what do we do? I think we continue these conversations in terms of connecting with like-minded people. And I think to Aaron's point, and we've talked about this quite a lot, right, like-minded people, values-driven, who are interested in cooperation and collaboration that's going to change the world in a different way and think differently around mental health and well-being. And if I come back to the original point of how do you actually get industry to engage better with universities, to engage better with government, to drive social enterprise and entrepreneurship, the only way you can do it is across collaborative platforms and conversations. And we've got the impetus to do that. I think, Aaron, you made the point of, if ever we're going to change, now's the time to pivot and change. There's a deep passion to make that happen. And I'm just really excited about the opportunities it affords. So Margaret, I don't know if you wanted to add anything else, but.
No, for me, one of my passions is innovation, but really innovation across boundaries. So the bringing together of university knowledge and industry action, and they don't have to be mutually exclusive and should never have been. But really also for me, looking at the incredible knowledge and research and innovation that is resident within all of our universities in Australia, how do we unlock that? Because it is absolutely fundamental to changing how we do things in the world, how we do things in Australia. And we also need to be mindful of what's happening globally and where we're playing in that space globally. And so it's not, we absolutely need our large corporates on board, we need government on board, but we also need to be thinking a lot more about how we engage with our smaller and medium enterprises in this space, and indeed our founders. So we need our founders, but we have a lot of small and medium enterprises, many of whom are net employment generators, and we know entrepreneurs and new ventures are net employment generators, and increasingly so. So the future composition of our industry base will also change, and change rapidly. We will have fewer and fewer larger corporates. So let's not forget about those existing smaller organizations and think hard about how we can include them in this conversation and include them in those collaborations. It's a challenge for them. It's a challenge for universities to work with smaller organizations who don't necessarily have those resources or don't have the, I guess, the scientific base perhaps internally to interpret what's coming out of universities, but we ignore those at our peril. And if we look to places like Europe, you now don't get university funding for research unless you show that it's going to be commercialized or put to impact in some way, shape or form. But you also need to include small and medium enterprises in your bid. That would be just another element for us to include as we start to think about really what it looks like to have inclusive collaboration across industry, university and government also, and indeed moving from triple helix to quadruple helix and including the broader community in that too. So that's it for me. I would just say thank you so much for all your time. Feel free to reach out to me if you have an ask of me, and I hope to see some or all of you in another similar conversation. And I'll just give you all a big round of applause. Thank you for inspiring me this morning.
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Jane.
Thanks, everyone. Good to see you all.
Thank you.